Welcome to Ability Assistance. My name is Phyllis Jones.
My name is Stacey Leibowitz.
Fellow Commission member Jeff French. And we've got a couple students from Greater Lawrence Technical School.
We are joined today,
Director of Compliance and Integrity at Triangle, Paralyzed Veterans of America. Members of our emergency preparedness folks, class in Lawrence.
Okay, that's okay. Yes.
my math is a little bit like 2.5.
Happy New Year and welcome to Ability Assistance. My name is Phyllis Jones and I am chair of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance.
My name is Stacey Leibowitz and I am the Commission Secretary.
Our crew behind the camera today are from Greater Lawrence Technical School's Graphics Communication Shop, Carly Jones, Adrian Brito, Jezebel Abreu, Julian Colon, Cassie Bonanno. And we have Joshua Robles, who's a current student at Northern Essex Community College and a GLTS alum from Graphics Communications. We also have a couple of special guests behind the camera today. We have State Representative Christina Minicucci from 14th to Essex, and we have Stephanie Afonte, who is a school committee member from GLTS.
We also have fellow commission members, Jeff French, Linda Byers, Nancy Murphy, and Dawn Stewart, and Susan Martin from North Andover CAM.
Our guests today are Elin Anderson, Community Relations and Outreach Coordinator, and Chris Hunt, Executive Director from the Professional Center for Child Development. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Let's start with Professional Center for Child Development. Can you give us a little history of how you started?
So Chris, do you want to start with that?
Sure. Well, the Professional Center for Child Development was actually founded in 1973 in the basement of Christ Church in Andover, where we had our co-founders, Vandal Anderson and Cindy Stockworth, who were really looking around their community. They're recent graduates of a nursing program and saw that there were some children that had medical needs that they could be able to support, and the parents needing some respite care. And through that became the professional nursery at Christ Church. And today we are an organization that works with over 1,600 children every year, ranging from the ages of 0 to 10 years old.
Now let's talk about the type of children you service. Are these medically challenged children? Are these children who are just considered to be on IEPs? Can you give us a little bit more about the children you would service, their backgrounds?
The answer is yes, yes, and then some.
And then some.
Right? So we have 4 distinct programs that we offer within the agency. So a lot of times parents get to know us through the individual program that they come through.
Okay.
So we have our early intervention program, which works with children 0 to 3, and that's our largest program. We're working in, Lawrence, Andover, North Andover, and Methuen. Then we also have an early childhood program that works with children. It'll be soon birth to kindergarten ready. And that's a center-based, high-quality early educational experience for children. And then we have our developmental day school, which is that founding program that I spoke about earlier. We're working with kids 3 to 10, and these children they're low incidence, medically complex special kids that we love to have in the program.
Okay, so let's start. You have 2 locations now?
We do.
Okay. Yeah. Lawrence and Andover.
Lawrence and Andover.
Why don't we talk about first Lawrence? What do you have in Lawrence?
Okay, we have our early intervention program, which is actually where we get to know Elin from.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. So my name is Elin Anderson. I live in North Andover. 2 children, Nora and Adam. And Adam is 11, and he has multiple disabilities. He has a genetic disorder, and he went through early intervention through the Professional Center for Child Development. And it's a wonderful program. Early intervention is based out of the Lawrence office, and that's where all our staff basically have their support, the admin support, and they go out to the families. We have an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, we have a special education developmentalist, so it's a big group of people that help, in the community, children with all different type of needs. So my son has a more multiple disabilities, but we also help children that has speech delay, children with some motor delays, and such.
Yeah, And what I would say is with the early intervention program, this is a special program for us. We're working with children under the age of 3. We're going in the homes and we're providing support to the parents and to the child to help them understand what their needs are. Oftentimes parents don't realize that they can actually call up and refer themselves to our early intervention program if they ever have a concern. So I've talked to my friends that have newborns and they're going, well, they're not quite talking right now. Well, we'll deal with the pediatrician. And what I say to them is, there's no hesitation with any early intervention program across the state. You call up and refer yourself. You do not have to wait for the pediatrician or somebody else to give that referral, because the intervention that we can provide earlier makes a longer impact over the life of the child. So if you're ever hesitant about it, you can give us a call. We'll come out, we'll do an assessment, we'll run the Battelle assessment, and we'll screen the child and we'll determine if they're eligible for services or not. If they're not eligible for services, okay, that happens. If they are, then we're backloading that with our awesome team. I mean, I can't speak to the experience that we have in the program with the longevity of our staff, the high quality of services. So, you know, our physical therapists have PhDs. Our SLPs have PhDs. You know, our occupational therapists are gifted in their talents there. Our licensed social workers, we have nurses. It's a robust team. And what I like to say is that when that therapist goes into the home to work with the family might be going through this experience for the first time. However, our staff is not, and behind our staff are hundreds of years of experience, where when we go into Elin's house and we're sitting there and Rena's talking to Elin about Adam, right? She's been there before. Rena's been there before. She's walked through, and she can provide not just the emotional support, but the technical support, the developmental support that she might not otherwise realize.
So in a way, there is support for the parents.
Well,
Absolutely.
it's a very, so we work with the families, not just, so it's the child is obviously the center of this, but it's like it's not just focused on the child, it's focused about everybody being part of the team, and that the parents are the leaders of the team, with the right support, with the resources. You know, when you have a child, you don't know what to expect. And then when you get a child who has a complex medical diagnosis, it's very stressful. And then you have people that Chris is, explaining. It was just that feeling of like, I'm not alone. I don't have, I don't have this to do this alone. You know, and just getting the support and give you those resources. It's phenomenal feeling.
I actually wish I knew about you folks with my son, because, you know, Dr. Mom, and they don't want to listen to Dr. Mom. And it wasn't until he had a more traumatic issue that we discovered he has a level of epilepsy. And had I known that earlier, perhaps, you know, I could have gotten him different services at a younger age.
And that's something I think we talk about this, that the early intervention program is so critical, because we deal with, or not deal, I shouldn't say, but we service and support so many different children of different abilities. And most of the children will graduate from our program and not needing services down the line. And then by giving the child the support early on in life, they could be more successful and not fall behind in the regular schools.
Right. And I just want to ask for the program, because it's obviously different than going to a public school to start. Is there a cost involved? What, you know, just so parents out there have an idea of how something like this would be covered.
What I would say is that there's no program that doesn't have a cost associated with it, right? But for the parents, there's no cost for them.
Right.
Through some legislation action that happened in the 90s within the state of Massachusetts, we can actually bill through the insurances, and there's no copay for families. So family,
That's
regardless
huge.
of what their insurance,
Yeah, that's huge.
they can come in and it's a free service. They're never going to see a bill. We work on the back end to do it. There is a cost, but it's not to the parents, which is important.
Yeah, right. Everything has a cost to it, but the question ultimately becomes, who pays the bill?
Right.
So we talked about Lawrence. What's at your Andover location?
Right. So at our Andover location, I mean, we have some fantastic programs that happen there. It is where we house or where our day school is located. And that's we have 2 classrooms right now, and it's a small ratio. We have a nurse in every classroom, along with a certified special education or licensed special education teacher and assistant teacher, and some administrative supports there. The environment is adapted for them, so that we have lifts, we have augmented communication, smart boards in the classrooms, and it's a great location for the kids to be able to come into. We also offer, through our early intervention program, a socialization opportunity for the kids to come in. And this is I call them toddler groups. Sometimes we call them 2x2 groups.
And I was going to say, let's break it down a little bit in terms of the groups you offer.
Right.
So we've talked about the birth and making sure that children are looked after to try to get them as diagnosed with services as quickly as possible. Now, I guess the next stage is toddler groups.
Yeah.
The toddler groups are a continuation of the early intervention program, because a lot of the children are in early intervention. It's good for them to have able to socialize and play with other children. So most of them are referred, or about half are referred from the early intervention program. And then we also have community children that comes in, as we call them as peer models, and for the children to learn from each other, how to interact with people that might be a little different than you. So that it's very popular, and because it's like different than a lot of other things.
I think it's fantastic too, because so many people get preconceived notions, but when you're a 2-year-old, there are no preconceived notions.
There's really not. It's
Yeah.
all, that stuff is taught. And if you're like from an early age taught that, we're all different, but we're the same. We're all
Yes.
humans,
And so we're always looking for community children to come and join us. So if you're out there and you're interested and you have a toddler, give us a call. We'd be happy to talk to you.
That's great.
And there's no charge for that either for the
If it's
for the-
community, because they're not part of the early intervention program,
Okay.
there is a small fee associated with it, but it's nominal.
it's nominal.
Yeah.
And then there's a preschool group
Yes,
as
this is
well.
actually a program that I'm really proud that we're starting to grow and expand. So
Okay.
coming in, we've had a preschool for a long time, but I think this is where one of the biggest need gaps are in our community, a high quality early educational experience for children, right? And we have so many children that graduate our early intervention program, and they might not qualify for an IEP because we've done our job. Right, we've worked with the families. That speech delay was not quite the speech delay it was when we started working. We build a relationship with them. They're not ready to leave us. So let's have a preschool program for them to be able to go into. It is full day, 5 days a week. We run from 9 to 3, but there's an extension on either side of it if a family needs to drop off early or pick up late. We will be opening up an infant and toddler classroom as well for that program soon. And this, I want to emphasize, is a program for children of all abilities, because that stays within our philosophy. Our mission is to eliminate the barriers to child growth and development. And one of the things that we see out there is the access to high quality early childhood experiences is critical to a child's growth and development. And so we're building a program that allows our kids that maybe graduated from our EI program that don't have another high quality placement to go to, or kids in the community that want to come in and get this experience as well. So it's children of all abilities.
And I think that's really quite critical in the sense too of integrating or inclusiveness between children who may have some kind of a cognitive or physical disability and those who may not, or who through your early intervention were able to, kind of work through those concerns and come out with a different outcome, and having that mixture, because that's great for the kids to have that exposure to each other, because then they grow up not thinking that this child is in a special needs area, like everybody's together, and I think that's important for the parents as well. So that's
And
really great.
We have children come to our day school, medically complex. We have an appropriate program that can get the intervention there.
Yep.
And guess what? They have siblings, and I want the siblings to be able to come to school together.
That's
right?
fantastic.
And they might be,
Yeah.
typically developing, neurotypically developing. Well,
Right.
but I want them to come and think about it from the parent's perspective. One drop off,
Yes.
right?
That's
how critical
very
is that?
nice.
Is that having one location where you're not running around town, and if we can reduce
Pre-program
that.
and post-program during
Right.
the
And
day.
then like the children who are otherwise might fall into the cracks. It's those children that need that little extra support.
Yeah.
The school district have, a lot of the school districts like North Andover has a wonderful preschool program that I had Adam go through. But he was, he had so many needs that it was very clear. You have some of the children that might not, they still are right on that, line of do they need something? And then we can provide that in a very qualified environment, because our staff is just very educated and know their stuff.
And I would say, and the other unique thing about the early childhood program is that we are able to tap into our occupational therapists, our speech and language pathologists to come in and support in that general sense all the children that are there. And you know, it's a fantastic collaboration, almost bridging those three programs together: our early intervention, early childhood, and the day school. And so some of our day school students even come in and integrate within it. We have community guest readers that come out and read, and we do it all as one big program, but they are distinct programs in and of themselves.
And kind of builds into the Commission's philosophy. Our technical name is the North Andover Commission on Disability Issues.
Mm-hmm.
Well, disability focuses on something you can't do.
Exactly.
But we amended it to be also known as the Commission on Ability Assistance, because pretty much everybody can do something.
And it's that focus. What do you want to focus on? What somebody can't do or what they can do. And giving that support to the children, whatever they're, you know, where they are at. And that's what we want to do. We want to meet them where they're at and, you know, reach for the stars. Help them reach for the stars.
Exactly, because then they can't say, well, because of this disability, I can't do what's up here, as opposed to, yeah, I've got this disability, but with the right tools and technology and where
support,
everything's
yeah.
always changing now these days, with the right assistance, I can do something more than what I thought I couldn't do, because they can't use it as, for lack of a better term, they can't use it as a crutch anymore.
Exactly.
And what I would say is that everybody has an ability.
Yes.
And I point to myself
yeah,
as somebody who has, there's things I don't do well, right? Elin can attest this. Let's not play to that, right?
Exactly.
Let's find the strength in every person, and let's build upon that strength so that we're all successful in life. And so I can share a quick story. I get to stop by our developmental day school, and Rhonda was doing an activity. It was actually a parent day, right? And she did an adaptive story of the gingerbread man.
Okay.
Right? We've all read that as a kid, right?
Yeah.
You know, and and I walk in, and I see one student who's interacting with the story because she has a button there, and she can push the button, and it gives a voice to her, and she doesn't she's nonverbal, right?
Okay.
So we're giving voice to the voiceless. We have another student who's there, and at his time to interact, he's able to say some of the words, or he's using his iPad to push and communicate that way. And then I have another student that when Gingerbread Man came up to cross the river, Rhonda had him interact by spraying the water bottle, and it hits his hands, and you see a little bit of a delay, but then he's laughing and he's having joy in it.
That's fantastic.
Our ability is to adapt everything that's going on so that we're meeting the child where they're at, and we're bringing out their strengths, and we're engaging them. And that's not just true for our development day school. That's for our early childhood program and in our early intervention program. It's a core philosophy that we have.
I
And I
think
mean-
that's just fantastic.
That's amazing.
And saying that as a parent who, I mean, I cannot talk to you enough about how much it meant for us. I started working there after Adam graduated. You know, Adam is 11 now, and I've been there for over 7 years. And just, you know, the feeling of the potential that they saw in my child, that, you know, when he had a diagnosis, you know, thought that he might not make it into adulthood, might not walk, talk, do anything. I mean, he's walking today. It was almost like I didn't believe my eyes when he started walking, and he would not have walked if it wasn't for those, you know, hours of support and work with, you know, a wonderful team that just showed his potential, and as a mother, you know, empowered me to be the best mother and advocate I could be for my son.
Now, starting at the age of 4, the school systems have to start getting involved with things like
Yes.
speech, and then, of course, you're in the kindergarten and the
Is that-
regular elementary school age. Do you provide the services through the schools? Are the schools referring the children to you?
So that works so the early intervention program actually stops the day before the child's 3rd birthday,
Okay.
right? And that's actually when, by public law, the public schools
Okay,
become
so it's
engaged.
3rd grade, not
and they have
3-year-olds, not
3-year-olds.
Yeah, it's 3.
Yeah.
Yep. And, you know, the public schools do a good job
Yes.
identifying, providing IEPs. And if there's an appropriate placement for them in district, then that's when they go.
Yeah.
If the program doesn't happen, district doesn't have a program that meets that individual child's needs, and they can, on the IEP, the placement, they can get enrolled into our developmental day school. And that's the placement there. We're an approved private special education school, so we're approved through DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, to run and operate, and the districts provide that opportunity. Beyond that, you know, the early education program is what we have for services, and we do have some kids on IEPs there, but it just depends upon the family and
And what the
placement
level of the
options.
IEP needs to be.
Right, because our job is to fill the gap. It's not to provide something that, if there's a program that already
Yes.
meets the need, that's not what we're trying to do. I do see a gap in the early childhood community that we can provide a service that is not accessible. So if a child goes to an early childhood program, unfortunately there are kids that are not successful in that environment, and they need a place that has a smaller ratio, that has that more specialized service. And we have that placement for them, and we can provide the services.
So what happens then, because your child is 11 now, has moved on or graduated, so what are the next steps then? So it sounds like you serve children until about the age of 10.
Yeah.
What is that transition like from your program to public school or some other school for that child?
Right, that's a good question. And because our developmental day school only goes up to the age of 10 right now, because we're staying within our expertise, which is really
Right.
work in
Which
the
makes
early
sense.
childhood
Yes,
realm.
exactly.
There are many options for family. I mean, fortunately, in the state of Massachusetts, there are many options. Some districts have in-district
Yeah.
classrooms that are appropriate. There's collaborative programs, and then I'm part of MAPS, which MAAPS, Approved Private Special Educations. That's their association. We have many. I think there's 156 approved private special education programs in the state of Massachusetts. It's a rich resource. Not many states have it. Many states send their kids to Massachusetts because we have these resources. And it's a team decision to determine what the next placement is for that child. But it's a collaborative process between the district and the family, and identifying what the needs are and finding an appropriate placement. We certainly are supportive of the families, and we're supportive of the districts, and we want to find the right placement for the child. Because everything that we do starts with the child and is wrapped around the families. And then it's the programs and services. So it's a collaborative effort, but unfortunately our programs at this time end at the age of 10.
Now, we were talking medically complex. Without obviously naming specific children, what are we talking about? Just so parents can get a better idea of what that means, especially if they've never heard the terminology before.
Right. That's a great question, right? Because there's not one cookie cutter answer to it.
And there never really is there?
Yeah, I might defer to Elin
Yeah,
because she
so-
can speak to it from her personal experience.
Well, so especially that when we're talking about the developmental day school, that's a school that we have more medically complex children, medically fragile. Some of them have a lower immune system, a compromised immune system, I would say. They have multiple disabilities. They might not just be blind. They might, have a vision problem, and then they could have a seizure disorder. They could have a developmental delay. They could have. So it's multiple. It's complex needs and needs a very specific team of specialists. Like they have nurses in the classroom. They have aides, because the children are, in order to provide education for them on their IEPs. And we need that team together. Does that make sense?
So we're not talking about the child who might be highly functioning on a slight level of epilepsy or a slight level of autism.
No.
We're talking about children that really need services that the town probably could not provide these children in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, because a lot of times it's a physical and mental, and it's more than one disability.
It's a combination.
Combination, I would say, yes.
Yeah, to try and put it into some understandable terms, because
Yes.
it's hard if you haven't been there and you
Yes,
don't
that's for real.
experience it. And so I'm trying to choose a way to demonstrate this. We have a nurse in every classroom,
Okay.
right? And oftentimes in a public school system, you're going to have one nurse for X number of kids,
Yes.
right? Some of our kids have one-to-one nurses,
Okay.
in addition to the classroom nurse. Plus, then I have a talented nurse that's outside in more of an administrative role that floats, so that if there's emergency going on, because we do have seizures in the programs, we do have feedings that have to happen. Most of our kids are not on, their diet is through a feeding tube. Most of them do have cortical vision impairment, so CVI, and so they're not their vision is impaired through that process. So every child that we serve is unique. So I can't answer it in a global term,
Yes.
right? So I'm answering in kind of this generality,
Yeah, that makes sense,
but
yeah.
it is, and that's our ability, is to adapt to the unique child's abilities.
What
Right.
I'm trying to make sure is people who understand that this is a place where children, the average child wouldn't necessarily go to. We're talking about children who truly cannot be
Right.
serviced in the school.
In the Yes, excuse me for interrupting, but
Yeah.
yes, that is the truth for the developmental day school. The early intervention is different because that is, we serve, minor delays to more significant.
Exactly.
So it's there. So it's interesting. We're a bigger organization, but we have distinct programs that are overlapping in some way, like Chris is saying, and there's some, but it's almost like we have different schools within one, under the umbrella of the Professional Center for Child Development.
Because we do see kids that are typically developing in our early childhood program.
Yep.
And that's a great placement for them.
Yes.
That's different than our day school. And certainly in our EI program, we see children with autism, which we all know is, the rate of diagnosis of 1
Is
to, I think the last number is
significant, yes.
56 that I heard. When I started working in the field, it was like 1 to 150. It's a concerning number that's out there. To kids that are NSA neonate absence syndrome, right? That's an automatic qualifier, and we can go and work with the families there. You got to work with where the family's at with that, because it's complicated, as everything that we do is complicated, right?
Yeah.
To speech delays, right?
Yes.
There's just a variety of services that we provide. And our low-income communities tend to have a higher rate of children with disabilities, and then there's the economic factors that go into that. And, so we have a program I'd like to thank for everybody under the age of 5, right, in the program for our services, but they vary in intensity and need.
And so with, for example, the program we were just talking about, that particular setup for those who have really complex medical needs, what would a typical day be like? What is sort of the curriculum and the support that is given to, I guess, provide maybe a more normalized experience for children who have these issues?
Right.
What does that look like?
So all of our curriculum is adapted.
Right.
Right, so we're charged with teaching the same things that the public schools are teaching.
Right.
And we have to do MCAS as well, if they're at that right
Really?
age, right?
Yeah.
So
I
we'll
know.
do an,
I know it's the truth. I'm sorry.
Like an
Can't get
automatic
away.
reaction.
Can't get away from that.
Can't get away from that.
yeah, and I cannot speak enough about the gifts and talents of the special education teachers that we have to be able to adapt that curriculum. So they come in, they arrive on their school bus, which sometimes is, a Pride Star ambulance coming
Right.
in. We'll receive them, they'll have morning circle, they'll have curriculum time, they'll have activities. We do cooking with the kids, right? And they might not be eating the food, but the smell and the sensation, because it's a multi-sensory experience to education,
Yes.
right? We are not just teaching this in a rote fashion of trying to learn it. We're trying to get them to experience it and see it. And our primary mission in the day school is education, right? We're not, we provide therapeutic interventions and services, but we are not a hospital.
So you're still
We're
teaching
education.
the three R's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are.
Yes, for those people who are too young to know, it's the reading, writing, and arithmetic.
What it
and,
is-
and the social studies and the science, they're still getting all of those
It's
same
just-
classes.
In a different setting, yes, it's just, or it's, adapted, and the teacher has to be very creative, because how do you teach somebody to write, they can't write? I mean, you can still teach them the alphabet and, the difference, in math and everything. It's kind of like, you go into a regular classroom, they just teach it in a different way. The messaging goes, it's the same, but it comes out in a little different way.
At the same time, it's got to be functional,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? So every individual IEP that we have, is individualized for a reason,
Yes.
to meet their programmatic needs and what they're doing, and so they have goals. But I can tell you, there was one time that Rhonda came down to my classroom, and there was a student who had, for the very first time, he was about 5 years old, ate half of a Ritz cracker, right? This was huge for him,
Okay.
right? Because he hadn't eaten, he had been on a feeding tube his whole life, right?
Wow.
So
That's
just trying to get that,
significant.
and think about the impact on the family there, to be able to give a child a Ritz cracker
Right.
versus having to do a feeding tube, right? So,
It's huge.
but that's part of our educational curriculum, exposure, different textures, sensory.
Right.
And the functional skills, to they learn some of those things. It's like, he's learning things that you kind of feel like, a typical child will learn on their own.
Yeah,
But
something
they,
you take advantage.
Right.
they
for
might have,
granted.
or toileting could be part of the IEP, and that's what they can work on. That was one of the goals, in addition to the more, regular curriculum.
And because our therapists are gifted with augmentative communication methods, bringing that into our classroom environment, doing an augmentative communication assessment, finding right way to communicate. So we have some kids that have mobility of their head, right? And so they'll have switches on either side so that they can turn their head to answer yes or no, because they can receptively receive the message, but expressively can't do it. But we need to find a way for them to be able to express it. This is actually an area that our regional consultation program that is overseen by Rachel Daniels excels at, because she will do these fantastic augmentative communication assessments for kids. And she actually works in 52 cities and towns, and we haven't talked about those services yet, but she's working with kids 0 to 5 through the Department of Public Health and Early Education and Care and DESE. Right? So it's
Currently,
covered.
where do you have local students coming in from? Because I mean, obviously, you're not saying you're a housing school. You're still a
Right,
community
we're not doing
area.
residential. We're there. So we can pull from anywhere in the state. Usually, though, they come from the immediate vicinity. So without getting into specific districts or anything, any public school is able, if they have a qualified child, to send their child to this program if the team decides that this is an appropriate placement for
place.
them.
Right.
Yeah. So we're not tied by geographical constraints there. It's more than likely what happens is a family wants to take into account the amount of time a child would travel on a bus. Because if you have a child with complex medical
Right.
needs,
You
putting
might-
them onto a bus for an hour,
Hour
Is
isn't
not,
necessarily.
yeah, that's
depending
not
upon
a
where they work or where they
practical
live, and they have to get there in an
Right.
emergency, they want to be close by. So we
Absolutely.
tend to draw from the closer towns to where the center is.
Is it possible for parents, if they're interested in the program, to make an appointment and take a tour of the facilities in advance so that they could feel a little bit more
Yes, for
comfortable?
sure.
Well, and not only that, we try to do some fun events so that families can join us. Elin actually is in charge of, we do a touch-a-truck where families, it's open to the
And
community,
it's
they
free
can come
event, you know, we just kind of, want to provide a fun place for families to come and enjoy the day, so.
Yeah.
That's, so we do events like that, and we do, our RCP department too, like have events for families and workshops and everything too, so we try to like get people to come and see who we are, and especially if you're going to start coming into any of our programs, it's nice to have that, some of the staff tours, our preschool, toddler group coordinator, Amy, she does tours every day with families that are interested in joining having kids join the player groups, because we don't want people to feel safe
Yes.
and comfortable when they come in, what to expect. It's like the routines and see what happens.
For our early childhood program, we have open houses from time to time, and people are welcome to come in. But we're always open to, you want to learn more about us, give us a call.
Yeah.
We'd be
And
happy
you
to-
have a website in case people want to also
Yes.
do it that way.
We do, yeah.
Which I think the kids are putting on the closing credits so that people can see that.
Yes, that's
Be
awesome.
able to find you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank both of you for coming in today and joining us. It was kind of eye-opening for me, and to be
Well,
able to
thank
learn
you
about
for
your
having
program.
us.
And a great resource for
Yes,
the community, so we're very grateful to have you.
Most definitely.
And thank you guys for what you're doing and spreading the word about all the services and recognizing all the abilities in all the kids.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes, thank you. So I'd like to thank again our guests, Elin Anderson, Community Relations and Outreach Coordinator, and Chris Hunt, Executive Director from the Professional Center for Child Development. If I could only read my own notes. And again, our crew behind the camera today were from Greater Lawrence Technical School's Graphics Communication Shop, Carly Jones, Adrian Brito, Jezabella Brew, Julian Colon, Cassie Bonanno, and then we've got our alum, Joshua Robles, who's at the Essex County Community College and from the Graphics Communication Shop. And we'd also like to thank our special guests behind the camera watching everything that these kids do here. We've got Christina Minicucci from 14th Essex State Rep, and we've got Stephanie Infante from GLTS's School Committee.
And again, to acknowledge fellow commission members, Jeff French, Linda Byers, Nancy Murphy, and Don Stewart, as well as Susan Martin, producer from North Andover, Can.
As always, you can find us on Facebook at Commission on Disability Issues, NAND. And you can watch our episodes online on North Andover CAM's YouTube channel. And we've got it on podcast. So again, and on every way we humanly can. On Podbean, it's called Ability Assistance. Thank you again for joining us, and until next time.